An English electric Lightning F1 pitches nose down above a field. Test pilot George Aird ejects as the jet fails, 1962. His parachute opens and the fighter crashes beyond the hedge. Aird survives with injuries after smashing through a greenhouse. On a Normandy beach, thousands of silhouettes cover the sand. Artists Jamie Wardley and Andy Moss drew 9,000 human outlines in 2013. Each figure stands for a life lost on the 6th of June 1944, the first day of the D-Day landings. The tide later erased the drawings, leaving only photos and the number to remember. A newborn fireball hangs in the air, caught by a high-speed camera less than 1,000th of a second after detonation. Its round skin shows dimples while sharp spikes point downward. The mushroom has not formed yet. Villagers play volleyball at the foot of a giant Buddha carved into the Bamiyan cliff. The figure towers above them, its face already damaged, robes cut in deep lines. This is Afghanistan before the statues were destroyed in 1992. Two friends try a dance step on a school path in 1933. One smiles in a sweater, the other stands behind and guides the pose. Their hands meet at the waist and in the air. The scene is light, close, and young, a quiet record of friendship at the edge of early adulthood. John F. Kennedy poses with his close friend Lem Billings, 1933. They practice a dance pose outside their school, smiling and steady. A brief, warm moment that hints at a lifelong friendship. After a raid in Korea in 1952, a young Private Heath Matthews leans against sandbags and waits for a medic. Dust covers his face. His eyes look distant, body rigid from shock and fatigue. Marcy Borders, the Dust Lady, moments after escaping the North Tower on September 11th. She stands in a yellow cloud, coated in dust, staring at her hands. She later died of cancer at age 42 in 2015. Tanks block a street in Bratislava as people crowd the sidewalks. A man steps forward, shouting toward the turret inches away. It was August 1968 when Soviet-led forces invaded Czechoslovakia to crush the Prague Spring. Two office workers, Joanne Capestro and her co-worker, stumble through Lower Manhattan. They escaped from a high floor in the North Tower of the World Trade Center and now search for safety after the South Tower's collapse on September 11, 2001. Two children stand in the corner notches of a giant log house. This was the world's largest log cabin, raised in 1905 from massive timbers and dark shingles. Families posed here for decades, and in 1964, a fire destroyed the building. Two chains stretch between cliffs at the hill temple of Jianyu in the 1930s China. A robed traveler crosses, one hand on the upper chain, feet feeling each link. There are no boards, only metal rings and space below. Two bootleggers stand in worn overalls before shelves of bottles and jugs. Federal agents arrested them near St. Paul, Minnesota in 1921. During Prohibition, making and selling alcohol was illegal. At the Eternal Flame, a Soviet veteran pauses on Victory Day, 1966. He moves on a small wheeled board, two long prosthetic limbs at his sides. The fire burns for the dead and for the living who live with its wounds. On a scarred hillside in Vietnam, 1967, two American soldiers pause over a tiny Christmas tree set on sandbags. One lies by a field radio, the other adjusts a bent star. The ground around them is burned and broken, yet the plastic branches glow with tinsel. On a small set, a real lion balances on wooden crates before a black backdrop. A cameraman frames the shot, and a microphone waits for the roar. Decades before, CGI, MGM filmed and recorded trained lions like this. Zach T. Wilcox, photographed in 1922, stands in a studio as his beard reaches the floor. At the time, it was credited as the world's longest. Steel tracks bite the road as US M4A3E8 Easy 8, Shermans of the 89th Tank Battalion, roll north toward Seoul in 1950. Crews ride the turrets, scanning alleys and hills for ambush during the battle to retake the capital early in the Korean War. 6 children stand in a line with flowers while their mother, Magda Goebbels, kneels by the youngest. The year is 1942 in wartime Germany. 3 years later, as Soviet forces closed in on Berlin, their parents killed all 6 children in an underground bunker on May 1, 1945. This is Porta Salaria in Rome. Through here, Alaric's Goths pushed in and sacked the city in 410 CE. The picture was taken in 1870, not long before crews tore the gate down. High above Black Canyon, a 45-ton steel pipe hangs from cables. Inside, a crew poses for a photo before installation at Hoover Dam in 1935. The pipe will carry water to the turbines that make power for the desert cities. Police arrest Gurgen Yanakian in California, 1973. He is 77, a survivor of the Armenian genocide who said he lost 26 relatives. Hours earlier, he shot and killed 2 Turkish consuls, men far too young to have taken part in that crime. In court, his lawyers called him a shattered man, no longer in touch with reality. Loaded with packs and rifles, soldiers file down the gangway into the heat. They are the 1st Battalion, the Royal Inniskilling Fusiliers, stepping ashore in Singapore on the 5th of August, 1948. Their mission was to begin operations against communist guerrillas in Malaya. A patient lies still while doctors crowd an operating table under gaslight. The scene is Boston, 1847, and a camera records it all, the earliest photograph of a surgery. Medicine is changing fast, with ether anesthesia newly introduced and photography capturing the moment. Outside a packed theater, a line of brunette models lifts signs toward a towering Marilyn Monroe poster. They call for a boycott of Gentlemen Prefer Blondes, saying the hit film shuts out brunettes and redheads. It is 1953 USA, and a playful protest becomes a snapshot of pop culture. Confetti settles on 2 U.S. sailors slumped against a curb in San Francisco. A bottle sits beside them. A bold newspaper shouts, "Peace." Moments earlier, they joined the city's roar for victory over Japan. Now, after a night of drink and relief, they sleep through the dawn of the 15th of August, 1945. On a hill above Canton, Guangzhou, a battered Japanese aircraft sits without wings, turned into a roadside site. Families and vendors circle the husk, peering into the cockpit as the city spreads out below. It is March 1949, 4 years after the war. A crowd roared, banners waved. Above a stone eagle, a young woman scrambled up the ledge and leaned in. Władysław Gomułka, first secretary of the Polish United Workers' Party in 1966, smiled as she planted a spontaneous kiss on his cheek. Kenneth Arnold holds a drawing in 1966, trying to explain what he witnessed in 1947. He reported bright craft racing across the sky, moving like a saucer skipping on water. Reporters grabbed the phrase and coined flying saucer. October 1938, Sudetenland. A Hitler youth climbs a wall to bolt up a new street sign. Tomasz Masaryk, the founder of Czechoslovakia, is erased. Adolf Hitler Street takes his place. On a muddy Manila street, families hurry past wooden houses. Word has spread that Allied troops and Japanese forces are closing in. Chinese-Filipino neighbors leave what they built. It is February 5th, 1945, and home suddenly means danger. A handshake loaded with meaning. In 1937, a British royal, Prince Edward, who had stepped away from the throne, and Wallace Simpson greeted the rising dictator, Adolf Hitler. There is a smile, a bow, and the press nearby. Before voices crossed oceans, a young engineer stood beside a box of coils and wire. It didn't look like much. It changed everything. In 1901, Guglielmo Marconi proved wireless signals could leap the Atlantic. To the street, it was just a lumber truck. But each brick was a hollow decoy, a honeycomb for bottles, and that little square in the middle was a trapdoor to a wet fortune. Prohibition didn't just breed speakeasies, it turned carpenters into smugglers and delivery routes into stage magic. Here, the illusion fails under a crowbar and a cop's grin. February 7, 1984. Bruce McCandless is testing the nitrogen-powered manned maneuvering unit, making the first untethered spacewalk about 100 meters from the orbiter. He and Robert L. Stewart repeated MMU flights on that mission. These Miss Lovely Eyes or Most Beautiful Eyes contests popped up around 1930. Entrants wore cutout masks so judges could rate only the eyes. Those are the dummy heads from the famous Alcatraz escape. On the night of June 11, 1962, Frank Morris and brothers John and Clarence Anglin molded sleeping heads from a mix of soap, toilet paper, and concrete dust. While guards saw the decoys in their bunks, the trio escaped through holes they'd scraped around the cell vents. Look at the scale. The 5 F-1 engines of the Saturn V tower above engineer Werner von Braun. Each nozzle could hold a person, and together they lifted Apollo off Earth. Washington, March 4, 1865. Thousands crowd the Capitol steps for Abraham Lincoln's second inauguration. The Civil War is nearing its end. The 13th Amendment has struck down slavery, and the president speaks of malice toward none. In 1859, tightrope legend Charles Blondin carried his manager, Harry Colcord, on his back across the Niagara Gorge. The rope stretched about 1,100 feet and hung more than 160 feet above the rushing water. Blondin steadied himself with a long pole, even pausing to rest midway. U.S. Army trials of the DeLachner Aerocycle, mid-1950s. A lone soldier stood on a platform above 2 contra-rotating rotors and steered mostly by leaning like a flying unicycle. Harley-Davidson's Juneau Avenue plant in Milwaukee, 1924. Workers hand-assemble rows of V-twin machines on wooden benches, lit by tall factory windows and bare bulbs. A giant airship meets its end. On May 6, 1937, the German passenger Zeppelin LZ-129 Hindenburg burst into flames while trying to dock at the U.S. Navy Air Station in Lakehurst, New Jersey. The fire consumed the ship in seconds, dropping it to the ground. Dozens died, many survived, and airship travel's dream faded. A U.S. soldier lifts 2 Vietnamese children from a firefight during the Vietnam War, sprinting past a smoking palm grove and an M60 machine gun set on its bipod. Moments like this, soldiers evacuating civilians under fire sit alongside the war's heavy civilian toll. This photo shows the last public execution in the U.S., the hanging of Rainey Bethia in Owensboro, Kentucky on August 14, 1936. An estimated 15,000 to 20,000 people crowded the square to watch. Sheriff Florence Thompson, the first woman to oversee an execution in the state, supervised but did not pull the lever. Workers inside Gadget, Gautier & C's Paris workshop hammer thin copper sheets into the Statue of Liberty's skin in 1884. This famous double grave sits in Roermond, the Netherlands. Colonel Van Gorkum died in 1880 and was buried on the Protestant side of the old cemetery. His wife, Van Efferden, died in 1888 and asked to rest on the Catholic side beside the dividing wall. Back in Frankfurt in 1946, a former German soldier leaned over a suitcase. He has come home from the war to rubble and silence. The house is gone. His family is gone. He folds into himself. 5 teenagers pose for a summer snapshot on a campus in 1971. The boy on the far right, Osama Bin Laden, stands shy but curious, not yet shaped by the world he'll meet. Under tall arches, torches glow and red banners hang. Rows of black uniformed Nazi SS troops stand still at the Feldherrnhalle. They raise their arms and repeat a loyalty oath before officers on a small stage. It is a strict staged ceremony in Munich, 1938. A bronze head lies in Budapest's tram tracks. The face is Joseph Stalin's, torn from a monument and dragged through the streets. It was October 1956, during the Hungarian Revolution. The fallen statue marks a brief, fierce rejection of Soviet rule. 3 astronauts stand in training suits beside a lunar lander mock-up, smiling before a launch. This crew flew the second mission to land on the moon in 1969. No one here is French, and no cables were chewed. That tale belongs elsewhere. From the side of a tracked vehicle, a Soviet soldier holds out a tin of condensed milk. A young polar bear stretches up to the steel. The scene comes from a routine expedition on the Chukchi Peninsula in 1950. Prince Charles, age 4, sits between the Queen Mother and Princess Margaret during Queen Elizabeth II's coronation in 1953. He rests his cheek on his fist and stares ahead, plainly bored. Packed into a landing craft, Canadian infantry crouch on wooden slats as ropes sway overhead. It is the morning of the 6th of June 1944, moments before ramps drop and one of history's largest invasions begins. Beside a wall of riveted armor, a German soldier stands in front of a captured French char 2C in 1940. The tank stretches across the frame. Built between wars and almost never used in combat, it was among the biggest tanks made. Germany's foreign minister stands at a microphone reading the declaration of war on the Soviet Union. Officers crowd the room. It is June 22, 1941, the start of Operation Barbarossa, the largest invasion of World War II. 5 figures in black walk in slow silence along a London avenue. 2 boys hold the center, faces tight. Crowds press behind railings. It is the funeral procession for Diana, Princess of Wales, 6 September 1997. An armored BTR rolls along an Afghan highway, dust rising behind a long convoy. Soviet soldiers ride on top, hands lifted in a quick, friendly wave. On the shoulder, 2 kids on a donkey wave back. It is the 1980s war in Afghanistan. Benjamin Guggenheim sits for a studio portrait around 1910, composed in a dark suit. 2 years later, he would sail on RMS Titanic. On the night she sank, he reportedly gave up a lifeboat seat, dressed in evening clothes, and asked that his family be told he stayed to help until the end. Pinned between plainclothes men and uniformed officers, a young woman, Blanche Barrow, a member of Bonnie and Clyde's gang, twists and shouts as they pull her from a field. It is 1933, the end of a chase tied to a famous outlaw couple. Shot in the 1920s, this studio portrait reflects Alfred Cheney Johnston's style for the Ziegfeld Follies. Many of his images stayed hidden during his life. After he died, boxes surfaced, revealing thousands of sharp, elegant negatives that redefined how we see that era. At the 1972 Munich Olympics, a masked gunman steps onto a balcony, scanning the village. Inside the apartment, Israeli athletes are held at gunpoint by his group. Television cameras carry the scene worldwide. The standoff ends in gunfire at Fürstenfeldbruck Air Base, leaving 11 Israelis, a German policeman, and 5 attackers dead. The Empire State Building rises in 1930. The limestone base is mostly complete, but a dark cage of girders crowns the tower. In less than 2 years, workers would finish the spire and claim the title of world's tallest. A stranger walked into a Kenora, Ontario bank on 10th May 1973 carrying a rifle. In his mouth sat an explosive held by a dead man's switch. Police surrounded the building. As he stepped outside, an officer's bullet struck him. The switch engaged and the device detonated. He died on the spot. His identity was never known. An improvised armored car rattles into Place Massena after Nice's liberation, September 1944. Built by the French forces of the interior from scrap plate, a boiler, and truck parts, it looks more comic than lethal, but it served. A mud-covered T-72B stands on a ridge as a Mi-24D flies low overhead. Rotors cut the air and throw dust across the field. Crews watch for ambushes and missiles. This scene comes from the First Chechen War in the mid-1990s. A thin wire stretches between the towers of Notre Dame. A young high-wire walker steps out in 1971, a long pole across his arms. Parisians and police watch from the gallery as he moves above the city, hundreds of feet up. No safety line, only balance and nerve. Moments after U.S. troops reached Dachau, prisoners seized control of the yard. A guard lies on the ground, clutching his chest. Years of abuse have burst into rage. The photo is from April 29, 1945, a raw scene of revenge and collapse at a liberated camp. Two crowded lifeboats pull across the dark Atlantic. They carry survivors from Titanic, pushed away from the sinking ship to avoid the suction. The boats turn toward the horizon, waiting for rescue that will arrive at dawn. Whiskey pours from upper windows in downtown Detroit, 1929. Agents have smashed barrels inside a Seas speakeasy, turning the facade into a waterfall. Gallons of liquor crash onto the sidewalk and run along the gutter. Prohibition is in force at the time. Albert Einstein at the opening of the 1939 New York World's Fair. He sits in a crowd as a woman perches on his knee and speaks to him. His expression is playful. Inside a small metal capsule, Laika peers out from the harness that held her for launch. In November 1957, the stray from Moscow became the first living creature to orbit Earth aboard Sputnik 2. She did not return. Jefferson Davis takes the oath as provisional president of the Confederate States at the Alabama State Capitol on February 18, 1861. People crowd the balconies and lawn to watch. The ceremony marks the break with the Union and the slide into the American Civil War. Cars wind up a hillside road toward huge white letters, Hollywoodland. The sign went up in 1923 as an ad for a new housing tract. Weather and time damaged it. In 1949, the city repaired it and removed land. Selma Burke, the sculptor behind the Dimes portrait of Franklin D. Roosevelt, stands with her bronze relief. Made from life sittings in 1944, her likeness informed the coin issued after his death. Under glazed brick arches, dignitaries in top hats crowd a new platform as the first New York City subway opens in 1904. The crowd leans in for a first ride underground, the start of a network that would link the city. An infantryman in a heavy coat sits by the road, rifle across his knees, beside a T-55 marked 199. The tank's track sags over its road wheels as the crew watches the street. It was December 1989 during the Romanian Revolution. Hands clasped behind his head, a Polish teacher faces the camera moments before execution in 1939. In the war's first months, Nazi forces hunted the country's scholars, teachers, priests, and civic leaders, killing tens of thousands to crush resistance. In a bright salon in 1914, three Scandinavian monarchs stood together. Håkon VII, Gustav V, and Christian X meet in Malmö, Sweden. They meet at the war's beginning to announce a shared course. Norway, Sweden, and Denmark will remain neutral. Suspended on cables above a vast bowl, workers bolt shiny panels into place. This is Arecibo in 1963, a giant radio telescope taking shape in a Puerto Rican sinkhole. The dish will span 1,000 feet, listening for whispers from planets and pulsars. Carl Newton Mahan sits on a courthouse step, clutching a doll wrapped in a blanket. He is 6 years old and on trial after a fatal shooting of another kid during a fight in Kentucky, 1929, becoming one of the youngest to be tried at the time. Night crowds jam a Lisbon street as buses stall and cars creep. Young people cling to doors and roofs, waving flowers and flags to soldiers passing by. It is April 1974, the Carnation Revolution. A near-bloodless coup by officers ends the Estado Novo. The city turns into a parade, neighbors cheering a promise of freedom. Chained and kneeling, a teenage courier faces his captors in a courtyard. 17-year-old Badi has delivered a letter to the monarch and will die for it. The year is 1869 in Qajar, Iran, where carrying a message to the Shah becomes treason. Hands raised, Jewish women and children step into a rubble-strewn street as German soldiers stand at the doorway. They were driven from cellars and hiding places during the Warsaw Ghetto Uprising in 1943. On a quiet street in England in 1938, a woman in a trench coat and gas mask pushes a boxy pram with windows and a hand pump. The carriage was designed by engineer E. W. Mills to protect infants from gas attacks. Demonstrations in Hextable and London came during the pre-war scare, months before World War II. Deep under Thuringia, a salt mine held the Third Reich's treasure. In 1945, U.S. troops opened a chamber at Merkers and found rows of burlap sacks and crates beside a narrow rail line. Inside were gold bars, coins, currency, and looted valuables. On a brick street in St. Louis in 1918, Red Cross workers lifted a patient into an ambulance. The city fights the influenza pandemic house by house. This scene shows calm, steady care in a fearful time. Outside a brick office in 1920, a sign reads, "Painless Dentist." A boy with a bandaged head stands on the step, chalk in hand, and writes one answer on the wall: "Liar." The promise on the door meets his sore jaw. Covered head to toe in iron spikes, this suit was worn by Siberian hunters in the 1800s. The spikes turned a bear's charge into a wound and gave the wearer a chance to stab or escape. The suit was leather under steel, heavy and clumsy. Rows of tiny cots stand in the snow while a nurse checks each bundle. The babies sleep outside, faces wrapped in white hoods. In the Soviet Union, some nurseries practiced cold therapy, believing fresh winter air would toughen bodies and prevent illness. This is the face of the Statue of Liberty, still on the ground, waiting to travel and be lifted into place. Built in France in the 1870s, the skin would turn green with time. A flat-topped ship slides across calm water, USS Langley, America's first aircraft carrier. Built from the Collier Jupiter, she gained a wooden flight deck and open hangars. In the 1920s, her tests taught takeoffs, landings, and deck handling, shaping the Navy's future at sea. Henry Ford sits in the first car he built, the 1896 quadricycle. A small two-cylinder engine and chain drive push it to about 20 miles per hour. This simple machine proved his idea and began the work that would change car making. Ulysses S. Grant sits on his porch at Mount McGregor in the summer of 1885, reading pages from his memoir. Throat cancer had weakened him, but he kept working to secure his family's future. This image was taken days before his death.